Rico, please go ahead.
Good evening, family and friends. Welcome newcomers. My name is Rico Cruz, grateful recovered alcoholic. I didn't have a question. I just had to reach out and touch my brother from another mother, Mr. Karl, man. So good to see you. Thank you for making me laugh. Thank you for making me cry with the truth. And thank you for being you, man. I love you, brother. Good to see you.
Rico, I still got pictures of you and I in Amsterdam.
I better give you my number so you can send them to me.
Yeah. Well, I've got them somewhere. I'm not sure where they are. They're back in my phone somewhere, but love that.
Take your time. We're not going nowhere. Take your time. I love you, Karl.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, Rico. If I don't see any hands, I'll probably pick a couple of hands, and if there's nothing, we can just end the meeting. And Teresa, please go ahead.
Teresa, alcoholic. Karl, love you.
I love you more.
I'm not a vision for you, so my camera's off. I wish I looked like that right now. No. Teresa, alcoholic. I want to thank you. You know, I use that story a lot. I like the analogy. That whole story is just so perfect. So yeah, I use that story often. I'm like, I remember Karl always says he was out in the vineyards. I tell that story often. I had a question about, because we get sober, we begin to live this life, and to me, you're just a product of the rewards of AA in every area of your life. Would you say that, can you tell me a little bit of how you see your children being a product of the gifts that Alcoholics Anonymous is giving you? You know, like, don't we rub off on the next generation? Would you say you've rubbed off, the program has rubbed off on them? And if so, how do they live their life today as a result? Get the question?
I get it, but I'm not. I will tell you what I know so far, but neither one of them has had a really good chance to drink enough to figure out whether they're one of us yet. Because their mother is, I got to give a lot of credit to their mother. Their mother has kept them so involved in sports and school and stuff. And, you know, my parents were really busy in their own lives. And so I got into all sorts of trouble young. My ex-wife, Stephanie, their mother, has done a great job at keeping them really busy. And I've done my share too, but boy, oh boy, I do a lot of traveling. And so I would not have been able to keep them. So they've not had a good chance to get a good fifth of whiskey in them yet. So I don't know whether they are like us. But what so far, it seems like the fact that they have a sober dad who says what he's going to do and does what he says, you know, gives them a sense of security that lets them operate from a base of truth. And I think that's a strong thing if you're not in active alcoholism. And again, I really want to emphasize, either one of my kids could be, they just haven't tried yet. I'm a firm believer that it's very possible, because if you look at the family I came from, there's no reason for me to be alcoholic. I had to, you know, I came from a really good family that gave me a lot of structure, and my parents had really interesting lives, and everything was laid at my feet to have a really, really good spiritual principles laid at my feet. And I took a drink and just boom, went off. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had to go and search in my family tree to my great Icelandic grandfather. His name was Bjarne Jónasson. My middle name is Jónasson, by the way. And he was a drunk, and he left a family in Iceland. He left a daughter and a wife in Iceland and married another woman on the ship on his way to Canada. So alcoholic and a bigamist. And my grandmother was one of 3 daughters he had while in Canada, and still had the other daughter in Iceland. That's the daughter that had the museum after her. Her name was Halldóra Bjarnadóttir. But nobody else, and there's at least 110 people that are from that man right now, because he had 3 daughters and they each had 4 children who all had 4 kids, blah, 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 my parent, right? So there's a lot of people that are alive right now. And to my knowledge, I'm the only alcoholic other than him. But I'm also the only one that carries his middle name. My middle name is Jónasson. Bjarne Jonassen, and my middle name is Karl Jonassen Morris. And there were writings about him that said, Bjarne is a good man, but never do business with him if he's been drinking. If Bjarne's been drinking, stay away from him for at least a week. That's what the writing said about him. So with my kids, right now they are doing really well in life. They really are. They don't seem to have any emotional difficulties. I feel so blessed, but I give a lot of credit to what their mother did for them. I think that my living by Alcoholics Anonymous, they learned to read. One of the ways they did not learn to read. One of the ways they practiced reading when they were little was in my back seat. They would read the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous from their little seats. Because why did they do that? Because the book was there. I'm a big firm believer that any active member of Alcoholics Anonymous needs to have at least one big book in their car, right? Because you always got to be ready. It's a good way to gauge, am I ready to work with others? Is there a big book in my car? So I always had one in the back seat, and they both would pick it up and start reading. All of a sudden from the back, we are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And look back, it's my daughter reading. So they also would go to a lot of meetings with me. My son especially, he used to love to go to meetings when I would speak. And he had no idea that you're supposed to stay quiet during meetings. It's not that he would be disruptive. It's just that if I forgot one particular story, he would stand on the chair and say, Dad, you forgot to talk about Paco. He was another guy in the military treatment center I was in, right? He would literally do that. Dad, you forgot to, and there'd be 300 people at the big breakfast meeting in Van Nuys, like, Ryan. So I am still here waiting, and I am fully ready that if everything explodes with my kids because they get into at some point they are going to engage with alcohol more than they have. They've barely even had a couple of sips. It has not really gotten there yet. So we'll see. But I know if they're like me, boy, are things going to change if they do. And so hopefully that kind of answered the question, Teresa. I'm still waiting. And maybe I'll never see it. I don't know.
Thank you, Karl. Before I just randomly pick people, if you don't like to share, that's okay. I just had a quick question, Karl, if you can clarify or just say a few words on, you talked about a lot of spiritual work and practices. What is your daily routine spiritual practice, and how did that change over the years?
Well, I am an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's the first and foremost primary thing. I may or may not get up and take some quiet time on a particular morning because I have the type of job and the type of life that maybe if I view it as a luxury that I get to wake up and have quiet time. But I also quite often will hop right onto a meeting. See, 86 and 87, and they say, upon awakening, we view the day ahead. And what they're really trying to get us to do is to center ourselves. Remember who and what we are, right? What's a really good way to do that? Go to a morning meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And how do I remember who and what I am? By doing, my name's Karl, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, you're new. Welcome, right? That right there, I got to tell you. Now, I'm a big proponent of staying quiet, looking deep into the soul, staying and trying to quiet the mind. Big fan of that. And I have various ways that I do that. But I got to tell you, for really getting centered into the purposefulness of life, there's nothing better than, my name's Karl, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, you're new. Is there anything I can do for you? Right? And one of the most beautiful things is we can do that so easily on Zoom these days, can't we? Just so easily on Zoom. We can wake up and we can do it and engage and remember who and what we are. You guys might find this strange, but I'm an avid golfer. I'm obsessed with golf. And I will argue till the day I die that golfing is a form of meditation. That if done properly and you quiet the mind There is something to just walking on this beautiful earth that's from our Creator, seeing that man has also worked with the Creator in creating this particular environment, seeing a shot that you want to take, understanding that it's going to require both human interaction, aerodynamics, and gravity, all the things that are available to us here, and that I'm going to pick the correct tool, make the proper swing, and get to watch that ball fly the way I had envisioned it in my mind. I got to tell you, there is a feeling that comes over my body of nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. I also am a big, I love to take long walks, and I take long walks. And I think that is a wonderful way to quiet the soul and to sort of remember who and what I am, and to, again, marvel in the beauty of this world. I like to take long walks. Right now, it's so hot that you don't see many other animals and birds here in Southern California. It's quite barren, right? Because it is 104 degrees out, has been for a while. But on other parts of the year, you walk along and you see wildlife everywhere. And I got to tell you, engaging and watching wildlife and realizing you're walking as one of God's creatures, that does a whole lot more for me than every day sitting alone in my house with some music going, trying to quiet my soul. And I do that too. I usually do that at invitation, right? I have a number of friends that love to do that, and I will always say yes to an invitation to do that. But my own personal ones are this. And then, so I also engage with I am especially on Zoom and with some, they are not meetings, they're just some few men's groups where men that are far more learned than I, and there may not even be an AA, that are talking spiritual principles. I sign on and listen and engage and listen to authors, and I read a lot of articles about stuff that we love to talk about. And I also love, I got to tell you, one of my favorite spiritual principles is reading articles and or paperwork or digging into AA history. That quiets my soul too. I'm fascinated with it. I am fascinated with AA history. Again, it has to do with that whole idea of this is sacred ground we're walking on. This is the place where my life was saved. This is the place, the only reason I'm still on the planet is this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. So I would encourage anybody that has more than 6 months, you really need to know more than Bill and Bob, right? At a bare minimum, by a year, you should know Dr. Silkworth, Roland Hazard, and Ebby Thatcher, right? And what part they played in that. To be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous for much more than 6 months and not really understand the, Roland Hazard, Ebby Thatcher, Carl Jung, Silkworth, and what part they played, and even branch in farther, of course, later, but at least that much. To do that for very long in AA and not understand the at least 7 or 8 players in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, it'd be sort of like claiming to be a devout Christian, going to church 3 times a week, and after a year going, there's somebody named Mary involved in this? Really? Who knew? Who knew, right? That'd be kind of silly, wouldn't it? That would be kind of silly. And I kind of put that over onto AA. For us to understand the beauty and the amazing privilege that we have here, we should understand the history of Alcoholics Anonymous. So.
Thank you, Karl. And we got Lana. Please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Lana, alcoholic. Karl, it's so good to see you. Your children are just beautiful spirits, and you and your wife have done an amazing job. I love seeing you on Facebook.
Yeah. Thank you, Lana.
And
I'm kind of irritating on Facebook, aren't I? Posting all those pictures and stuff.
No, I love it. I love it. No, I love it. Yeah. So grateful to be a part of. But okay, so you got me. I'm gonna ask you a question that's gonna get you really going, since you said what you just said. So what do you say when you have someone in a meeting who says, I don't know how AA works. I don't know. It just works. What do you say to that?
Well, I get two feelings. I understand that feeling. I really don't understand how AA works when it really boils down to it. Why is it that one alcoholic can affect another alcoholic like no one else can? Why is it that working a personal inventory and sharing that with another human being gives me the relief? That why is it that paying back the money gets me to not take a drink? It doesn't make logical sense. So I understand the feeling of, I don't know how or why it works, but it does. But I would also follow it up with, and again, this is, again, I would say spiritual maturity would be that I can hold two ideas that seem to be in conflict, but I can hold them together at the same time. The other one is, well, there's a whole chapter in the book called How It Works. And, if you're, I would say to that new person, I would strongly urge you to start reading the literature of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you would be able to see how it works, and then learn how to start teaching others how it works, because the real magic of Alcoholics Anonymous comes when I'm teaching others, right? That's really when Alcoholics Anonymous actually transpires between me and another person. I sponsor a number of guys. Some of them, many of them are really, really active. Other ones, but it's kind of like, I've got a few guys that sponsor so many people. It's like, if it were a multi-level marketing scheme, these 3 or 4 guys would be my money lines, right? Because they have, I have grand sponsees, great grand sponsees, great grand sponsees. Little kids walk up to me and mean, hey, you're my great grandfather sponsor. And I get, well, tell me all the names in between. And so I do that as an exercise to get them to know what the lineup is. So, you see, but when I'm working with somebody, I don't even think Alcoholics Anonymous really has transpired between me and him. When he keeps calling, the new guy keeps calling me saying, I've got this problem and I need advice. Hey, sponsor, I've got this other problem, and this problem has subset A, B, and C, and I need help with my problem, sponsor. Until the phone call changes from that to this, see, when this phone call comes in, this is when I think AA has transpired between me and the other fellow. When the phone call comes in and he goes, hey, sponsor, I've got this new guy and he's got this problem and this problem and this problem. I wanted to bounce it off you before I gave him some advice. Bingo! Alcoholics Anonymous has now happened between me and that guy, because he is now consciously concerned about the well-being of another person rather than trying to use me as a free therapist, right? That's when Alcoholics Anonymous has happened. And that's when I know he's going to be just fine. He's going to be just fine, because you see, when I for a while, when I kept on thinking that I had to find the right sponsor, the sponsor that's going to give me the golden answer, rather than to realize what I need to do is, yes, of course, I need a mentor in my life. Yes, I need somebody to turn to that knows enough about me that he can give me some objective observations about my life. But really, my job is to be an effective member of Alcoholics Anonymous for people that are newer. And that's when a whole world of solutions opened up to me. All right. Hopefully that answered, Lana. And thank you for your compliment on my kids. And I'm going to look you up on Facebook and send you a wave here soon.
Thank you. We got Stacy B. Please go ahead.
I'm Stacey. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you so much, Karl. I got so much out of your speech. Thank you. You said something that I haven't heard in a long time, and my sponsor insisted. I remember when I told my sponsor, I said, sponsor, I have a life. I got to go to school. I have to take care of my 2 children. I had 2 girls at the time. I was divorced. I didn't have my husband in my life anymore. I have to go to work. I had a full-time job. I was a very busy alcoholic. I was doing this. I was going to work at night. I was going to school during the day. I was doing this, I was doing that. And I said, listen, I said, I have all these things that I have to do. You know, I'm trying to take care of my kids and you know, so on and so forth. And I gave her this, I gave her that. And she said, well, I understand that, Stacey. She said, but I need you to go to a meeting every day. I understand that you have a life. She said, but you need to build your life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then if you build your life in Alcoholics Anonymous, then you will stay sober. She said, but if you try to build a life without Alcoholics Anonymous, then you're more than likely going to drink. And, you know, I had tried it my way before. And what happened was that I had gotten drunk. And so, you know, by the grace of God, I listened to what she said. And could you explain that a little more? Because that's a concept that I hadn't heard in a long time. And you mentioned that in your talk. And that's very important because a lot of times we try to build our life out there instead of trying to build our life in here. We have to build our life in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. My sponsor told me to build my life in Alcoholics Anonymous. And then, you know, my life will be fine out there. Thank you.
You've explained it perfectly, actually, on top of what I already did. You really did. You explained it really, really well yourself. And so I just wholeheartedly agree with what you said, that that we have to pay attention to what we're doing in Alcoholics Anonymous, because without that, everything else goes. Now, let me tell you, I'll tell you this little story, and it kind of goes along with what both you and I are talking about. When I got out of the Navy, I signed up and I took 21 units in order to get a degree. And I was only getting the degree as an amend to my parents, because when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, they had been sending big checks to the state university. I wasn't really going. Well, I did go, but you know, I got in those 3.5 years that I was there, I got like 10 credits. My grade point average matched my blood alcohol content, about a 0.25. So my sponsor's sponsor, it's never good news when your grand sponsor gets involved in decisions, is it told me I had to go either pay my parents back every single nickel they had wasted, or I had to go get what they paid for in the first place. So when I got out of the Navy, I found a university and I had to take 21 units. I needed to really push through, and I had to work. I had to be self-supporting, and I had to be at meetings. So my life was school, work, meetings, meeting, school, work, meetings, meeting, school, work. And I had 3 commitments a week out in West Los Angeles. I was working in Long Beach. The school I was going to was just south of Covina here. And I would be in school from 7 a.m. to noon. I would work from 1 to 6, and I was in a meeting every single night. And I had this little car that I had to push start, and I'm puttering around all over. I remember at that time I was so broke, I had to decide whether I was going to spend the money on cigarettes or D-sized batteries for my boombox on my seat, because I like to listen to Chuck C tapes and Nora Malpe tapes, cassette tapes, right? And I couldn't afford both cigarettes and D-sized batteries. That was literally a decision. But I would go to the meetings, and my other friends are, you know, hey, Karl, what are you doing? Schoolwork, meetings, meeting, schoolwork, schoolwork, meetings, meeting, schoolwork. And one of them, there was this little crowd standing there, and one guy says, hey, Karl, what's going on in your life? And I said, schoolwork, meetings, meeting, schoolwork. And he said, Karl, the book says we absolutely insist on having fun. The book even says it, Karl. The book says we absolutely insist on having fun. And I stopped, and I'm going, wow, maybe. But he was misquoting it. He was misquoting it. It says we absolutely insist on enjoying life. And what I didn't realize is sometimes the things we need to do to build a life that we can enjoy are not always fun. Right? So I had to go through a number of years of schoolwork meetings, meeting, schoolwork, meetings, meeting, schoolwork, in order to build a life inside of Alcoholics Anonymous that could hold me and set me up in the real world to succeed. And that was really important. And they, you know, he didn't mean to misquote it, but man, oh man, if I would have stopped and gone, you know what, I should have fun. I should hang out at the beach more. But I needed to buckle down between 2 years and 5 years to get a life. And I got to tell you, remember, I don't mean to boast here, but I'm going to boast a little bit. I was just driving down to be the Saturday night banquet speaker of the South Bay Roundup, big giant convention. And I was driving on the same freeway that I used to have to go to work at for General Electric while I push start my car and putter along and trying to figure out cigarettes or D-size batteries. And I went onto that same freeway as I was driving to a place where hundreds of people love me and I love them. And I was in $100,000 car. Right? And I'm not saying that but I'm saying that by living in Alcoholics Anonymous and visiting the world, all those other things have transpired that we used to think are important, right? And I had this giant wave of gratitude as I turned from the 605 onto the 91 freeway. And I realized what my life had become. I got kids in college. I'm living in luxury. I love so many people and people love me. How blessed am I, right? And many people think that if we spend our time focusing on AA, we won't have all the things that life is supposed to give us. No, it will be richer. It will be fuller. And when the tough times come, we will be able to stand. We will see that flimsy reed is really the loving hand of God. If we're away from Alcoholics Anonymous and build a life, it's the old spiritual principle of building your house on sand rather than on rock. And when we reach for it, will be a flimsy reed when we reach during the tough times. So I really encourage you, let's build our house on the rock of Alcoholics Anonymous. What else we got?
All right. Thank you, Calvin. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm still an alcoholic. And Carl, I want to thank you so much for your message tonight. I remember being just so close to Alcoholics Anonymous. I still am very close. Go to a lot of meetings, do all the things you was talking about. But sometimes I can go to a meeting and I remember just being so, and what happened was eventually somebody grabbed my hand and took me through those steps. Really grabbed my hand. And I caught on fire. And now it's settled on in, things are like what you're talking about. Life is kind of taking on its own meaning. But sometimes I go back to the meeting and I talk about my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous as growing from just going to meetings and don't drink. You made a perfect example of that part. But I'm around the people who just don't drink and go to meetings, right? They're the people I grew up with. And so sometimes they kind of like get a little resentful as little rocks are thrown here and there, and I could take it pretty good. But every now and then I don't like it. And today was one of them days. And I had to call Rico and a few other people, and they kind of set me back on the path. And they told me to Calvin, you talk with love and you talk from your heart. And I try to do just that. But sometimes you get teased. And when that gets to you, what do you do? What do you do, Carl? Thank you.
Well, I know that people that are not on the path like to throw rocks to the people that are on the path. They throw it from on the side. But I sort of chuckle, and in my own head, remember that in every school class that I was ever in, there were a lot of kids that weren't paying attention. And for many years, I was one of those kids. I was sitting in the classroom, but I wasn't paying attention. And anybody that just goes to meetings, you got to be there. There's a million spiritual reasons to be an active participant in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous on a very regular basis. But if, Calvin, you and I both know, if you're in there in those meetings and listening as they do, read chapter 5, read chapter 3, read the traditions, you see the steps on the wall, you don't got to be too bright to know there's more to this thing than going to meetings. And so they must not be listening. And okay, but we got to be at meetings, right? I don't agree with people that say, well, meeting-based sobriety is not AA, because I understand what they mean, but it can be so misunderstood that we shouldn't be at meetings. Because where is it that we learn we need to work the steps? Well, Calvin, you said you were at one of those meetings and somebody took your hand. Had you not been to the meeting, nobody would have been there to take your hand. It's always in the meetings where I learn what I need to do in between meetings. It's always in meetings where I'm going to meet the sponsor. It's always in meetings where I'm going to meet new people. In fact, I've heard that meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous are the best place to meet new people. Who would have known? In fact, it's easy to find them. they actually raise their hand and say, I'm new, right? So it's the best place to be. But if we listen, we know there's a lot more to it, right? And hopefully, my defiance in I'm just going to go to meetings, that can set by the wayside. And usually a little deep, dark anxiety in the middle of the night that many of us can get when we're new can go, maybe I should listen a little closer and start doing some of those things that the old timers are talking about. And maybe I should go follow Calvin and see what he's doing, right? That's usually what happens. But one last little thing. Quite often and you probably had this too, Calvin. Somebody walks up and goes, I need to make amends to you, Karl. And I go, for what? Well, I've been talking crap about you for the last 2 years. And now I've realized you were right. And my sponsor said I need to make amends, and they walk away. And I'm thinking, I didn't need to hear that. I actually was feeling really good until you said that, right? So if you've been talking crap about somebody, you finally realize you need to work the steps, get in the center of Alcoholics Anonymous. You don't need to go and tell the person that you were talking junk about, and ruin their day. Because then I now have to reach down deep for a spiritual tool to get back on my day that I was having before they encountered me. So anyway, a little bit of joke there, but I'm having a good time right now. But I think we're getting close to the end, aren't we? Somewhere near.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to pick one, and if there's no other hands up, Robert M., would you like to make any comments or questions before we close it off?
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't blame me for throwing you in front of the gun, Robert.
No problem, brother. I'm a real alcoholic. My name's Robert Martin. And Karl, thank you very much, brother. I saw the flyer earlier today and was sitting out on the recliner going, I don't know. And my wife goes, "You're gonna go to the meeting?" And I go, "Oh, yeah." Karl's speaking, and Karl knows I got sober in Southern California, and I'm attracted to Southern California sobriety. That doesn't mean it's not any good anywhere else. It's just what I was used to. And I'm going to say this because I've heard Karl tell the outside story before. My father was a very good friend of Chuck C. And when him and my mom were getting divorced, he went down to Chuck's house to talk to Chuck because he was really in a bind. And Chuck said, the one thing I'm going to tell you, Les, he said, whatever you do, never speak ill about your children's mother in front of them, ever. You look like you're on the same team, no matter how much it hurts. Come complain to me, complain to Twinkle Toes, complain to Don Schaefer, complain to whoever, And when you told that story, you may have never known that story, but my brother was riding to a Raiders game when they were still playing in LA with my dad. And he was a friend of his in a program was really bad-mouthing the mother in front of the kids before they were leaving for the game. And he turned to my dad as they were going down the 110 or the 11 or whatever it is now. I've been there so long for the game. And my brother said, "Dad, I want to let you know something. When you and Mom were going through that and everything was crazy, you never talked bad about Mom in front of us. And I always appreciated that." And he was riding in his little TR7 wedge, and he goes, "I could feel the hair stand up on the back of my neck" when he shared the story with me. And he said, "I could feel Chuck reaching down, touching my shoulder, going, 'I told you, asshole.'" It's like, and that's what we learn. And I love that. And there's a line in here, and I know you referred to it, and I'll shut up after this, but it says, "Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. So please, if your day's not going good or you're not doing the best 11 step or whatever it is you think you're doing, you're probably doing just fine." Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Love those stories. Love those stories.
Karl, any final thoughts or comments before I pass it back to Mickey to close us off? All right, Mickey, and back to you. Thanks for allowing me to your service.
Thank you, Kuna. Mickey Alcoholic. This concludes our Q&A.